Hey guys, welcome back to Georgia Hills RC. We've got soldering bench set up here. The reason we got that going on is I've got my Freewing F-16 V2. Been working on this for a while, kind of put it off to the side for a little bit, but this is the 8S version and we need to make a connector. So we have two 4S 5000 packs that we need to join together in series to make 8S. Now, I tried something out. I generally make my own series cables, which is what I'm going to do today. But I bought this series connector from Motion RC, thinking that maybe this was going to be an easier way to do it so I didn't have to make it. I do usually make my series connectors. All my 8S, 10S, 12S aircraft, I make my own, but these weren't that expensive. I think they were only like $5 or $6, so I thought I'd try them out. But after looking at them, I wasn't really too impressed, so I decided I was going to cut the covering off and take a look on the inside. I'm going to show you what they look like on the inside and why I decided I'm going to just make my own instead. So after you cut the covering off, see if it'll focus here, all they did was solder the edges of the bullets together. Now they're not full rounded bullets like these ones are, where they have just the full cavity. They're half bullets. They're the half cavity. So that's how they join the two together. So there's only the right and left edges of the bullets touching, and to connect the two together they use this little brass or copper bar here. Then I looked at the bar, and the bar is actually hollow. It's a very thin piece, so I'm not really comfortable using this in a 8S airplane with, I don't know, that thing's probably got over a 130 amp ESC in it. I'm not going to use this. So we're going to make our own, and that's what this video is going to be about. And also, while we are making our own, that's going to allow us to attach the Spektrum external battery connection that will plug into our receiver here, so we'll actually get telemetry on our 8S setup. So we've got our external voltage cable. We've got 3 wires. I cut them all the same length on this one because I'm trying to make it pretty short. Got 2 reds and a black. I'll show you why I'm doing that later. We got our flux, our solder, some shrink tube, our battery bullets with the connectors, and our device bullets with the connector. I know I got one more extra one here, but while I had the soldering gear out, I had a little mistake with this battery. It ended up shorting out one of the ends, so figured while I got the soldering gear set up, I might as well just replace this so I can use this battery again. Alright, so let me put the camera down, get it set up, and we'll go over how this is going to work. Alright, so here's how the series cable is going to work. We've got our two 4S batteries that we're trying to make 8S, so we got to build a series connection. So we're going to have one battery connection that's going to be plugged into the ESC. We have 2 device connections. Those are going to be plugged into the batteries. So we're going to have a black cable, which will be the negative, running to one side to one connector. We'll have the positive from the ESC running to the positive on the other battery, and then we'll have another wire that connects the positive on one side to the negative on the other side, which basically makes a giant loop, adding the voltages together and giving us 8S. Now, with our external voltage connector here, we're going to end up soldering that into the plug that goes into the ESC, so that we'll get voltage for the battery, the full 8S voltage, that we can read on our receiver or our transmitter. So the first thing we got to do is get the wires all tinned up. I got the soldering iron set up, so let me get these tinned up and then we'll go from there. Alright, soldering iron's all heated up. We've got flux on all the wires, so we're going to just tin both ends of each wire along with the wires that go to the external battery connector. Pretty simple. Get some solder on your soldering iron. Get it on the wire. The flux will dissolve. You just keep feeding the solder on until the wire is soaked with solder. There you go. Clean the soldering iron off, and there we go. We got one wire is done. So we're going to do the other end, all the rest of them, and then start working on the connectors. Alright, so we've got all our wires tinned. Now we need to work on the bullets and barrels for the connectors. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is the size of the wire I'm using today is a 10 gauge wire. I try to match the wire size that's coming from the ESC. So the ESC on the Freewing F-16 is a 10 gauge wire, so I'm making the harness out of a 10 gauge wire. For some of my larger aircraft, I use 12S. Those have 8 gauge wire coming from the ESC, so I build the battery kit or the Y harness for an 8 gauge connection. I'm using wire I got from Tower Hobby. It's the Gen Ace silicone wire. I got a bunch of this stuff because I use this all the time. So I got 10 gauge, 12 gauge, 8 gauge. So seems to be a nice wire, working well so far. This is actually the first time I've used this. So we're going to get some solder in these barrels and get the wires put in. Now, one of the red wires will get a male connection on each side, and that's going to be the wire that goes between the two battery plugs. The other red and the black one will get the male bullet and a female barrel. The female barrel is also going to get the corresponding red or black wire from the external battery voltage connection that we're going to be putting in. Alright, I'm going to try to get this on camera. Hopefully it works so you guys can see it. I'm going to start with the one of the more complicated parts. We've got to put two wires in the same cup. So this is going to be the red one. The first thing I'm going to do is get some solder onto the cup in the barrel, and then we're going to get the red wire put in the barrel, get the solder soaked in, and then we're going to get the external battery wire plugged in as well. Soldering iron's coming up to temperature right now. Alright, get a little on the soldering iron. I like to go on the side of the barrel a little bit towards the top. Flux is melting. And we're getting solder inside. Okay, while it's still liquid, I'm going to put the red cable in. Takes a second to get the red wire heated back up a little bit. As soon as it starts to go liquid, we can let that soak in. Oops. And then the hard part. Okay, now that I got that set in there, try to get it to go liquid again. And we get the red wire stuck in there. Go. Let that cool off a second. And there we go. We've got the red wire with the female bullet on there with the external voltage wire on there. Let that cool off for a second. Then what we're going to do while we're waiting for that, we've got some red shrink tube here. I like to try to keep it the same color so that when you're plugging your batteries in, you can see the red and the black. We're going to cut a little piece off here. You're going to slide it over the top. Alright, I had to get a slightly bigger piece of shrink tube. Slide the shrink tube over the top. I'll make sure we can still get at the rings that get pressed into the EC5 connector. Get all the wires out of the way, and then we'll just shrink the tube down over the wire. This particular shrink tube has adhesive on the inside that melts when it's heated. Helps kind of glue everything together. There we go. So there is one completed end. We'll put the male end on this side. We'll get the black wire in the female barrel on this side, and we'll get all the pieces soldered up, and then we'll look at what we've got. Alright, we've got all the bullets and barrels connected. So here's what I like to do with that wire that goes between the two batteries, because it's going to come out the positive on one battery and go into the negative on the other battery. So when you're hooking your batteries up in your plane, it's always nice to have a visual guide as well. So the positive side out of one battery, I have that red, and I put some black heat shrink tube on the half of the wire that's going to go into the negative on the second battery. That just kind of helps you visually line things up. So I've got, this is the negative one on the device side. So that's going to go in there. We're going to press it in. There we go. And then the positive on the other end is going to go into the positive on the other device plug. Press that in. Alright. Then the negative that comes from the ESC is going to go into the negative on one battery, and the positive from the ESC is going to go into the positive on the second battery. Now all we got to do is plug the barrels for the, this is going to be the battery connector, and that's going to get plugged into the ESC. We push those in and the plug will be done. I'm going to press these together and we'll see what we got. Alright, so here we have our finished connector. So we've got our battery plug that plugs into the ESC, and we've got our two battery connectors down here, or device plugs, that are going to connect into the two batteries. So we've got our two 4S's here. We plug one in here, plug the other one in there. Now we have a 8-cell battery, plugs into the ESC, and we've got a plug for the receiver for the telemetry voltage. And when you're done flying, you can just unplug both batteries. You can leave this in the airplane. You never have to take this out. And then swap your batteries out. Hope that helped. Again, this can be used to make, you can do 8S by doing two 4S's, 10S with two 5S packs, 12S with two 6S packs. You can also make a 6S pack, or do a 6S airplane with two 3S battery packs. So these come in very handy. I make these all the time. Most of my jets actually have these in them. Anything that runs over 6S will have one of these in there. So you can make them different sizes, kind of tailor the length and the to how you need it in that particular airplane. This one's nice and small, should fit in the F-16 really well. So now I can actually get the F-16 finished and get that in the air. So there will be a video of that thing flying once I actually do get it in the air. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped.